this is episode number 2 of the Music is the Source podcast. I am John Chorba, and today I'm going to go off on a rant on Greta Van Fleet, the band everyone seems to love to hate. So I saw an article. This is what prompted this rant. I saw an article I'm on planetrock.com. The headline is Greta Van Fleet singer calls for an end to their Led Zeppelin comparisons. And the quote, so apparently Robert Plant had made a quote a while ago, last year it seems. His quote was, he borrowed his voice from somebody I know very well, but what are you going to do? At least he's got a bit of style because he's said he based his whole style off Aerosmith, Plant added while rolling his eyes. So obviously, Robert Plant has an issue with Greta Van Fleet, whatever. Like, you know, they sound like them. Like, what do you want me to tell you? Like, they sound like Led Zeppelin. And that's kind of what he said, the singer of Greta Van Fleet, Kiska, is that his name? Kiska? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but obviously we hear the similarity to Led Zeppelin. That's one of the influences of ours, but at this point, it's like, okay, we've acknowledged that. Let's move on. All right, so that's what I want to talk about. Because, you know, there's a lot of hate for them, and I can get where some of that's coming from. Some of it is a little illogical. Let me give you my thoughts on Greta Van Fleet first. I think they're good. I like them. I liked their first record more than their second one. I don't love them. They're not, you know, they don't grab me in the way that some other bands have done. But I like them. I'd buy their vinyl. That's the best way I could put it. I'd buy their vinyl, but I wouldn't buy a t-shirt, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like that's my, you know, comfort, my level of comfort with my relationship with that band. I would buy their vinyl, but I wouldn't buy their t-shirt. I would stream them. I would put them on playlists. I'd own their record, but I wouldn't buy a t-shirt. I would take one as a gift though. So if you want to buy me one, then that's fine. Just make sure it's soft. I can't stand t-shirts that aren't soft. So, but I get where the hate comes from. Some of the hate is illogical. Some of it is justified. All right. I mean, if you don't like Greta Van Fleet because you just don't like them, like the songs sound like shit to you. They're, you know, you don't like them. They don't inspire you in any way. They don't provoke any sort of emotional reaction. Hey, like that's music. You like things, you don't like things. That there's really only 2 categories of music. Yeah, I say it's good music and bad music, but really what that means is it's music that you like and there's music that you don't like. Okay, and that's it. That's really all that matters. The genres really don't matter. But if you don't like them because they're just ripping off Led Zeppelin, I have a little bit of an issue with that. And my issue with that is, why does originality have to matter so much? Because you see this over and over again, that as music evolves and progresses, right? Like the bands that get seemingly the most notoriety when you look at milestones are the bands that are most original. But that doesn't mean that every single band has to do something that is so progressive that it breaks new boundaries, okay? We only get 12 notes. Musicians only get 12 notes. So there's only so much new things that you can really do. And I don't understand why the originality has to matter so much. It's either you like it or you don't like it. It's either good to you or it's bad to you. Why does it have to be groundbreaking? Why does it have to be something completely new and never been done before in order for it to be good? It's the music snob types that do that, right? I feel like the people that I know that have the most amount of hate for Greta Van Fleet are ones that are more than likely to be a little snobbish about music, right? They have their idea of this is what music's supposed to be, and if it's anything outside of that, it's horseshit, you know, and they're not afraid to tell you that. They're not afraid to share that specific opinion with you. So I'm really talking about those people, right? When you just put such an emphasis on, oh, it's not original. Oh, it sounds too much like that. Come on, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. Because why is it bad? Why is it bad that they sound like Led Zeppelin, right? Especially if you like Led Zeppelin. Like, if you think Led Zeppelin sounds good, right? If you think, oh, that sounds amazing, and Greta Van Fleet sounds like Led Zeppelin. Granted, if you're going to compare them, right, Led Zeppelin does it better. I'll get into that later. But they sound like, they write similar music, similar riffs, blues-based riffs. The guy sounds like Robert Plant. The lyrical themes are different, but they sound like Led Zeppelin. So if you like Led Zeppelin, why wouldn't you like that music? If that sound is what does it for you, why wouldn't you like it? You know what I mean? Again, I think it comes down to intent. If I get the hate, if you feel like Greta Van Fleet was put together in a music factory where like some, fucking executives at a label were like, hey, smoking their cigars, being like, let's put together the next fucking Led Zeppelin. We're gonna make a mint on this. Like, if that's what you think, right? If you think that they're a pre-packaged band that is put out there in order to advance something, I could kind of get that. It sometimes could feel like that. It could feel a little prepackaged. I don't know much about like how Greta Van Fleet became famous. I don't know much of their backstory, so I'm completely hypothesizing here. But it seems that they have some major music industry, support, right? I'm not sure if they're on a major label. I don't know anything, but it seems, given their level of popularity, it seems they have some sort of machine behind them. And because they're young, you can't help but feel like, okay, they're young, they have a machine behind them, so this was a pre-packaged thing that, is being sold to us. And if that's the case, then I totally get that's a justifiable reason to not like something, right? But, if it's not, if that's what they love to do, if they really want to sound like Led Zeppelin and be that, then they need to fucking own it, right? So I'm going to talk about that, but I want to say, go back to the originality thing. Everybody rips somebody else off in some way. Like, true, original, groundbreaking things are kind of rare, right? They're kind of rare. One thing that blew my mind, right? I'm a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan. Stevie Ray Vaughan is, to me, the best blues guitar player that ever lived. I wouldn't say, I don't know. Like, I go back and forth between that. I hate saying that. I hate making a best. He's my favorite. I'll say, I hate saying best. I'm trying to correct myself as I speak, because sometimes I say people are the best, and it's like, no, that's who I like the most. To me, Stevie Ray Vaughan's the most important blues guitar player to me, right? And a big reason why is, he was kind of one of the first real blues players I ever heard, but he sounded so unique and sounded so original, right? Sounded so original. Something so unique about the way he does things, right? And then, and that's still true. He is was a groundbreaking, I guess still is, a groundbreaking, guitar players are still discovering him, every year. But the way he did things, the way he played was unique, right? But then I listened to Freddie King. Go listen to Freddie King, and you're like, oh shit, that's where Stevie Ray Vaughan got it from, right? You combine Freddie King and Jimi Hendrix, you're like, they're Stevie Ray Vaughan. So obviously there was some element of Stevie Ray Vaughan going, man, Freddie King plays like that, Jimi Hendrix plays like that, I fucking love that, so I'm going to play what I love, right? And I think that's the key, right? That's what we all really gravitate towards. It's not originality, it's authenticity. It's when people are playing what they really, really love, right? That's what they want to do the most. They want to sound like this. They want to play like that. When they do that, when they play from the heart, it's authentic, and that's what we really gravitate toward. It's not really. If it just so happens to be something that has never really been done before, then that's just a bonus. But like that originality part, man, I don't know. I think it's rare. I think it's really rare to be super original, simply because especially in terms of blues and rock-based music, there are certain things that certain sonic music identifiers that go, okay, this is what makes that genre, right? And when you start, in order to step outside of that, certain fundamental elements of the music would need to be changed, and then it becomes not that anymore, right? Like if you're a blues rock band and you're starting to use like melodic minor scales or harmonic minor scales over a blues thing, right? Like it's cool. It could be very cool, and it could be your own thing. But you are now stepping outside what has been determined. Like this, okay, this is the blues rock realm. This is kind of what that sounds like, and these are like certain things that you just do in this world in order to sound like that, right? And if you step too outside of that, then it becomes not that anymore. It doesn't mean it's bad or good. I love a lot of that shit, but it is what it is. It's no longer that thing. You know what I mean? So I think originality is a little overrated. But now, what they need to do is they need to make a decision because they're backpedaling, right? When I see an article like that, if Greta Van Fleet is looking at this from the perspective of, oh man, too many people think we sound like Led Zeppelin and we're getting too much hate and it's a bad thing, and we need to change because of that. They need to change based on what people think of their music. Man, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong, right? Like, do you think Zeppelin gave a shit? You know what I mean? Zeppelin, I believe they've been sued. Like they ripped off blues things, right? Like, and by rip off, I'm not saying they did something that was completely illegal or immoral. I think they were heavily influenced. I don't believe they ripped anything off where they said, hey, I heard that, I'm fucking stealing it, that's mine now, and go fuck yourself. Like, I don't think they did that. I think they just heard things, and it got stuck in their subconscious, and it was like, oh, I love that, I'm gonna write like that. All right, but when I hear or read something like this, that there's this outside influence of, man, we're getting a lot of heat for the way that we sound, and now we need to change, right? I mean, that's uncertainty. And again, like what makes great music, in my opinion, is when it's completely authentic and there's confidence. I mean, there's definitely songs that you could kind of tell like come from a place of, uncertainty and it's cool and it's got a vibe, but like, I don't know, when like when you're like, yeah, like this is who I am, this is what I write, this is what I do, right? When you have all that working for you, right? When you're like, this is it, this is what makes me me, and you do that, I believe people can hear that, and that's what they gravitate towards. Like, so look at somebody like Bob fucking Dylan, man. Like, what's great about Bob Dylan as a musician, right? Not a great singer, not a high-level guitar player, good lyricist, right? But what makes him awesome is because that's him. You know what I mean? Great songwriter, obviously. Songwriting skills very much through the chart, through the roof. But like, in terms of musical ability, nothing special. Nothing like it's like, oh wow, right? But it's authentic. That's who he is. That's how he writes. It's what he is. And we gravitate towards that. I'm a firm believer in that. I'm a firm believer in the music that I love the most. I could hear it. I could feel the authenticity, right? And so that's my opinion and my advice to Greta Van Fleet is either you want to be Led Zeppelin, you want to write music like that, or you don't, right? And I'm of the opinion there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with being like, I want to write music like Led Zeppelin, right? Especially if you sound like Robert Plant, because that's a hard-ass thing to do, right? Not many people can sound like that. So if that's what moves you, if that's what is like true to you, then please do that. Don't back away from that. If that's who you are, fucking do it. Do it. Do what you are, right? But if you're not that, right, if it is a prepackaged thing and you were forced because somebody said, oh, this guy sounds like Robert Plant, we could package this as, they're the next saviors of rock and roll because they sound like Led Zeppelin. If that is a marketing thing that is used to just sell who you are and it's not really who you are, then by all means change, right? By all means change. But it sounds like you guys need to have a band meeting, and figure that shit out. Like that's important. Who you are as a band is important, and you should be writing the things that are true to you. So, but one thing I wanted to add here was the comparisons to Zeppelin, right? So like this is where I hate comparing bands to one another, right? Because it's not. Eddie Vedder had a thing that he said like way back when about like winning a Grammy, right? What's the best song? Well, they're two different songs. Like how can one be the best song of the year when there are two bands, or two artists doing two completely different things, writing two completely different songs with two completely different objectives? Like what makes that one better? That's subjective. Like that you can't truly compare that, especially when there's a lot of things that are dissimilar. It's the same way when people try to figure out the best grunge, like who's the best grunge band. Well, none of them sounded the same. Like Nirvana didn't sound like Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam didn't sound like Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains and Soundgarden had the most similarities, but obviously didn't sound anything alike. And there's so much overlap with that with a lot of just rock music. You can't compare punk rock to blues rock. You know what I mean? Like that they're two different things. You know what I mean? But in something like the Grammys where there's just the rock category, and they take all the genres and put them in there. Like, come on, what does that mean? But comparing Greta Van Fleet to Led Zeppelin is at least a fair comparison because they sound very, very similar. And now, if you were to ask me which one does it better, it's not even close. It's Led Zeppelin by a mile. It's by a mile. Because honestly, the funny thing about all of this is I remember listening to the latest Greta Van Fleet album, which, to be honest, I only gave it one listen. I didn't give it enough attention to have a really, really good opinion on it. I thought there were some really good riffs in there. I thought there were some good ideas, but I wasn't, I wasn't blown away about it. But I remember one reaction I had with it was, as soon as I was like on like song 5, I'm like, man, I kind of want to listen to Zeppelin 4 right now. You know what I mean? Like you made me want to go back and listen to Zeppelin. So. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's where the hate comes from with Greta Van Fleet. Maybe people are listening to Greta Van Fleet and becoming sad that Led Zeppelin hasn't put out any new music in 40 years. Like, that's possible. That's possible because I'm like, oh, man, fucking Zeppelin was a really good band. I'm going to go back and listen to them, So that's that was my initial reaction. I thought it was really good. I thought it was good. Like I shouldn't say it was really good. Like I said, I'd buy their vinyl. It's good. It definitely, it's better than a lot of newer stuff that I've heard. At least it's blues-based rock, which is what I love. Any type of blues-based rock or blues-based metal. That's what gets me going. So I'm always going to gravitate towards that stuff. But not liking them simply because they're not original, right? If like you're not liking them because they didn't break some new ground, they didn't, you're at some point in time, like you're just reinventing the wheel. Like there's really only so much you can do, and especially if you like if you like doing that type of thing, then do it. What the hell? Why are we complaining? I think it's overrated. I think originality is an overrated thing. They're figuring out why you like music is an important thing, and I just think the fact that it doesn't sound like anything else isn't high on my priority list when I'm listening to music. Like if it sounds good, it sounds good. I don't know, it's pretty simple. Good is good. That's the way I'll leave it. Good is good. All right, that's it for this episode of Music is the Source podcast. I will see you next time.